Welcome to ShortVIEW. ShortVIEW is a new video format we have here at the LSE, talking about issues of corporate governance. I have with me here Hans Hirt, Director at Hermes Investment Management and also Fellow of Corporate Governance at LSE. You're just back from Germany, having a big show at the Deutsche Bank AGM. What were your main points there?
Last week we attended the shareholder meeting of Deutsche Bank and gave a speech, and that's something we do very rarely on behalf of our clients and 40 big pension funds from all around the world. But we had very significant concerns, and I think they're threefold. One, we had concerns about the performance against the target set in the 2012 strategy. That was the first concern, which was reflected in a poor share price performance over the last 3 years. We have concerns about progress on culture change and dealing with litigation and investigation. And lastly, we had very significant concerns about the LIBOR settlement of Deutsche Bank. They paid $2.5 billion in April, and we think ultimately that's the responsibility of the management board.
So, do you think this is a particular problem of banking in general, or, because we were talking about banks and bank governance since the financial crisis, or is there something particular about Deutsche, or is there something particular about the German shareholder rights model?
I think there are a couple of points mainly on this point. I mean, there are problems in the sector, but there are also Deutsche Bank specific questions. So I think it's fair to say that banks are at different stages of a journey towards adopting a new business model and having a different culture and really creating long-term value for shareholders. And Deutsche Bank probably hasn't made as much progress as some of the other banks we are looking at across Europe. I think you're also right in saying in Germany shareholders have specific rights at the shareholder meeting. There's a so-called vote on the discharge, which basically means shareholders can express once a year their opinion about management and very formally say we approve of what you have done, or we disapprove and we have a lack of confidence. And that's really what happened. And Thursday last week, that 40% of the shareholders said, almost 40% said, we have lost confidence in the management board. And that's a very strong message to the supervisory board who appoints the management board.
Well, to me sounds 40% almost sounds they have lost the trust of the investors, because many people just vote with the management anyway. So it takes always a bit more to stand up and vote against it. So do we have to change maybe the management? Do we have to change people on the supervisory board? Do we have to change both parties?
Yeah, in Germany it's it's a little bit different. You have the supervisory board, the non-executive directors elected by shareholders, and you have the management board who's appointed by the supervisory board. And what shareholders said and what shareholders focused on is really the lack of confidence in the management board. So Dr. Achleitner, who's the chairman of the supervisory board, has now a very clear mandate from shareholders to arrange changes, to prepare changes possibly, but it's really the task of the supervisory board to take action from here.
Maybe shouldn't have Dr. Achleitner acted much earlier. Has he failed?
Dr. Achleitner was elected by shareholders in 2012, so he's now 3 years into the job. He didn't have a choice. At the same time, the co-CEOs Anshu Jain and Jürgen Fitschen were appointed. So I think you're right in saying it's also getting closer to Dr. Achleitner, and he has responsibility now for some very important decisions that have been taken around strategy, and of course he's ultimately responsible for the performance of the management board. But I think it's too early to question his role. He has done, from all we can tell, he has done a decent job and has put in a lot of work in improving the work of the supervisory board.
But maybe I want to challenge you on that, because if we read the strategy document of Deutsche Bank, there wasn't very much detail in it. You wonder really if they could decide what kind of strategy they wanted to have, if they wanted to have the old banking model or if they want to be an investment bank. So how can you come with a with a paper like that to an annual general meeting?
We would agree that it probably has taken too long to present this new strategy, and there has been a discussion over the last half a year, and things were leaked to the press. So I think the process was rather long, and probably the management board didn't start as early as we would have expected when it became clear that the old strategy wasn't really a model that was working, creating value for shareholders. It's also disappointing, as you rightly say, that when it was revealed, the new strategy in late April, but there were very few details on. There was some major announcement, for example, to deconsolidate Postbank, but the details were not really provided, and they have said, give us another 90 days to work out the details, and then they will communicate details. So I would probably say it's too early to pass judgment on the strategy without really knowing not insignificant details around the strategy announcement.
Do you think that points to a bigger problem of governance in a German system, or is it just something particular about Deutsche Bank? I
think it's about banks. It's not about the German system. The German system, during the financial crisis, German companies have performed quite well compared to Anglo-Saxon peers. The two-tier system with employee representatives on the supervisory board has shown its advantages. So I don't think it's a problem of the German system, where actually shareholders have quite significant rights and opportunities to influence what's going on. So I think it's really about the banking sector and Deutsche Bank trying to find a business model and finding a new culture that will ensure that they create value for all stakeholders, including shareholders.
Culture is an interesting keyword. You know, it always is on the other side of the spectrum of corporate governance. And corporate governance is about rules, about rights, about enforcement mechanisms. Culture is very soft. Do you really think you can change a culture in a bank?
I think the question is more, it's not about can you, but it's about how long it will take. And I think that's really interesting, and it's a fair question. I think Deutsche Bank was rather optimistic in 2012 in saying we have a culture change program now, and sort of raising expectation. They have now said, look, this is a continuous progress and will take a lot of time. But what they've also conceded in their annual report, they've done a survey amongst their employees, and they said, yes, the employees understand now better our values, but the employees also said that change really hasn't sort of affected or manifested itself in a change in behaviors. And they have said at the AGM that something they will focus on really are behaviors changing, and then also to demonstrate to other stakeholders how things are changing within the bank. Because
if you really think about it, there's a contradiction. Banking is very much about numbers, bringing in numbers, being kind of tough. And culture is then something very soft. So if you have a competition between the two targets, obviously the hard numbers will always win. So don't you think this is just kind of marketing to appease the public, that things get better? I think that's a very good point, and I think we need to accept this challenge. But what the global financial crisis partly has said, and business practices in banks, is exactly that that you need a sound corporate culture in order to create long-term value. I mean, Deutsche Bank, one of the things they're struggling with is the thousands of cases of litigation and investigations. The LIBOR case settlement, $2.5 billion, and I think this is just demonstrating that if you don't have a sound corporate culture, you will not be successful in the long term. So I would disagree, and I think the two really go very closely together and are not mutually exclusive. Thank you very much, Hans.
Thank you.